Peace, love, and blessings, fam. Johnny Sally here with day number 32 of Wisdom of the Ages. If you've missed the previous episodes, you can go catch them on YouTube at Loyalty Life, spelled Lyfe, Legacy, LLC. Day 32, Immortality. The Single Hound. This quiet dust was gentlemen and ladies, and lads and girls, was laughter and ability, and sighing, and frocks and curls. This passive place, a summer's nimble mansion, where bloom and bees fulfilled their oriental circuit, then ceased like these. Emily Dickinson. Emily Dickinson is an American poet who spent her life in Amherst, Massachusetts. She wrote close to 2,000 poems during a reclusive life dominated by a stern Calvinist father. Like Walt Whitman, Robert Frost, and Ralph Waldo Emerson, she wrote about an inner spirit in nature and mankind. I have always been intrigued by this poem and quote it frequently in my lectures. I feel as if I am personally delivering a message from one of my favorite 19th century poets. When you look around at your body and your world through this poem, you have to admit that everything you see, everything you experience with your senses, will someday be quiet dust. Yet, the part of you that is noticing all this is never the quiet dust. When you transition, the instant after you leave your body, it will weigh precisely the same as when you were alive. There are studies that say that's not correct, but I digress. Imagine that your body is the same weight, alive or after you've left. My conclusion is that if the body weighs the same when life leaves as it did when life occupied it, then life is weightless. You cannot weigh, measure, compartmentalize, identify, or otherwise put boundaries on life. Emily Dickinson poetically describes this part of ourselves, the part that defies the dust bowl of the material world. Scientists explain this material world as a planet with a finite supply of minerals. By this, they mean that the total supply of minerals is already here on the planet. There is no outside source of minerals. If you could determine how much iron is here, for example, you would have a total count that you could identify as Earth's supply of iron. It is a finite amount, and when we use it all up, we cannot go to another universe to replenish our iron supply. Within your own body, you possess a specific fraction of our total finite supply of iron. When you have a blood test, you can know whether you are high or low on iron. Now, for the $1,000,000 question, where was the iron that now flows through your body before you showed up here on this planet? And where will it go when you make your departure? This is a part of the mystery that Emily Dickinson addresses in her poetic observation. Hold up a handful of quiet dust and ask yourself, what is what it was yesterday and yesteryear? Was it an elephant's trunk? A Jurassic creature? Michelangelo's eyeball? Every material particle is in a constant state of change. The more graphic scientists remind us that we are all tomorrow's food. All things in our physical universe will eventually become this quiet dust. In a sense, in this poem, Emily Dickinson is poetically saying the same thing that Aristotle did when he wrote, "Let us live as if we were immortal." They are both informing us that everything and everyone has a circuit to fulfill, and that when it is complete, it ceases in its current form and shifts to another. The material of our bodies is recycled, while our true essence remains. In another of her short poems, Emily Dickinson writes, "Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves, and immortality. This awareness is a great source of liberation. It is your ticket to eternity. It allows you to stop fearing the death process. In many ways, the death process of your body can be a great teacher rather than something to fear. I recall being asked by a teacher in my life to sit in deep meditation. During this quiet exercise, I was instructed to imagine myself leaving my body and observing it from overhead. Then I was to move farther away and ultimately to actually leave the city, country, hemisphere, and finally, the entire planet. As I observed the Earth from my imaginary position, outer space, I was then given the assignment of picturing our planet without me on it. This was a great exercise for subduing my ego. At first, it just seemed too weird to contemplate because my ego kept saying, "What's the point? What good is an entire planet without me on it?" That's ego. Then I began to identify more with the part of myself who was doing the watching than with the aspect of myself who was being watched. It is the quiet dust that we watch, and that dust is what our ancestors were actually made up of chemically. But the watcher needs no chemicals, no dust. When you become the noticer full time, you will completely lose your fear of the death process. Your essence was never born and can never not exist. Eternity is not something that you pass into, you are already in it. In other words, now is eternity. Your mind has not been trained to believe in your immortality. Therefore, it does not know that you are immortal. It has been trained to identify with only what it sees. There is a command center in your brain where all your decision making, emotions, and human experiences seem to originate. Yet, within that command center is an invisible, formless commander that is incapable of not existing. Only through the awakening of that divine nature will you come to the awareness that you are immortal. That commander in your command center gives the orders, yet you've never seen him or her with your eyes. To know your internal commander, you must shut your eyes and directly experience your eternal divine nature. The experience of the immortal self does not come from education, conditioning, or science. This idea arises from the depths of your being, and you quite simply know it to be true. Your invisible nature is real, yet we know also that it can never be surveyed and mapped. We know this because we can look beyond the dust of our bodies and in quiet divine meditation experience immortality for ourselves. Emily Dickinson, in her beautifully simple poetry, asks us to stop and realize that the bodies we inhabit, the cars we drive, the clothes we wear, and all things made up of chemicals and dust are destined to fulfill their prescribed circuits and then cease. Death is what we call the cessation process. But that which is beyond chemicals is free to ride forever in the carriage with you. Yes, you and immortality as the only passengers. You can have a more direct experience of what Emily Dickinson wrote about if you practice the following suggestions. Use your own transition time as a teacher, a companion that is always with you. Imagine that you are talking to your absent body or body absent of spirit from a perspective of acceptance and love rather than fear. Remember, the death process is experienced only once. But if you fear it, you will transition in every minute of your life. Use that moment as a reminder to live more fully each day. 2. Do the meditation exercise of viewing the earth without you on it, which he described earlier in the essay. This will help you to shift your allegiance and your identity away from what you notice to be the immortal noticer that is always with you. Remind yourself that all the time that passes before you showed up here did not cause you to be filled with fear and anxiety, nor will the time after you leave this body be of any more troubling. Remember the last words of Robert Louis Stevenson. If this death transition, my bad. I don't like using that term, especially knowing if I get on TikTok or if you're watching this on TikTok, it has a tendency to, dislike phrases and terms like that. And also, this book is, let me let you know when it's from, because some of the information is kind of changed now. 1998, not including the times that he got a lot of these writings from people. But yeah, remind yourself that all the time that passed before you showed up here did not cause you to be filled with fear nor anxiety, nor will the time after you leave this body be any more troubling. Remember the last words of Robert Louis Stevenson. If this is death, it is easier than life. And also, these final words of Thomas Edison. It is very beautiful over there. Indeed, it is just dust returning to dust, while the eternal remains. This awareness is your ticket to eternity. So, because, like I said, I know that to be different, I'm going to actually look it up. Because there are studies that show that once you transition, once you're at that point, there are 3 places that your soul resides. Here, here, and here. And they coalesce into a ball that actually does have weight. So we have to be cautious when we're reading these older books and still do our own research. So I'm going to go look it up right now. And if I'm incorrect, I'm incorrect. But, I don't believe I am. Does the body weight change after transitioning? Supposedly it's 21 grams. Snops was the fact checker that Snop says it's incorrect, but I'm gonna let y'all know personally. I don't pay attention to a lot of these fact checkers because Snops had something to say about a process that is known by some people, and Snop says that it's false. And I myself know it to be true because I've seen certain books that were actually removed from a location that I was at because of how powerful that information could be. So yes, there was a theory, and the belief is 21 grams. Your soul, it is believed that your soul weighs 21 grams. And after you transition, your soul comes from those 3 points and actually exits. Now, back to the topic of immortality. Energy never ceases to exist. It just transfers into something else. Again, this is a vehicle, a vessel. The real you that is operating outside of this simulation can be seen similar to a child playing a video game. If you've never played The Sims, check it out. That's the simplest way I can put it. But when you understand that you're technically immortal, you fear the possible ramifications of what happens when you leave this plane. Now, we've also been taught to fear that process through religion. The fact that you're going to transition at some point and be pushed into a place where you're going to be tortured and mortified for all of eternity. And if the divine creator of all is love, depending on which book you're reading, why would you create us to then torment us? It doesn't make sense. So I ask you to begin to examine deeper your knowledge and do research for yourself. Stop depending on other people. Stop depending on snobs. When you find something, keep going. Because the wild thing is, people find what they want to. So if you want to find something that validates your claim, you're going to find that. If you want to find something that invalidates yours or another person's claim, you can find it. But truth doesn't lie, and truth doesn't change. Facts may change depending on who's drawing up those conclusions, but again, I digress. No one understands that you are immortal. No one understands that at the end of the day gotta end. But the day doesn't end the way you think it may. That day ends like a movie with a sequel. That day ends like you going to sleep and waking up to have another experience or adventure the next day. But once you go to sleep from this realm and you learn to awaken in the next realm, that's when it gets very, very fun and enjoyable. So I thank you for being here with me again, more so for yourself than for me. I ask that you walk in love, walk in light, walk in peace, and know that you are loved.